Of the top 4, I'm the only one that didn't win my season. They probably think that I don't cook as refined as them. But that's my journey, is realizing my self-worth. I want to win for Paducah, for all the mamas and the papas that think they have to choose between their career and their family.
Welcome to the Eat Your Content podcast. I'm your host, Rich Herrera. Thank you for tuning into our podcast. You have a lot to choose from, but you chose my little pod, and I appreciate that. So follow us on socials at Eat Your Content and at Rich Herrera. Just a few programming reminders. I am going to be doing the breakdown of The Bear Season 2, so make sure you follow on all your podcast providers of choice so you'll know when those drop, and you'll be able to hear those podcasts when they come out. Special guest with me today. We just finished recapping Top Chef Season 20, and I'm very happy to have Chef Sara Bradley, runner-up, on the pod today to do a quick interview and talk about her experience on the show. She was a finalist on Top Chef Season 16 in Kentucky, also a finalist on Top Chef Season 20 World All-Stars. She's the chef proprietor of Freight House in Paducah, Kentucky, and, you know, just a super mom and all-around nice person. Chef Bradley, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. So I'm just going to start with this and get it out of the way, and we'll talk about other things. That damn liver.
4 minutes. Let's go. I'm going to go liver right on top of here.
Let me know when to start slicing.
Yeah, wait. We'll do everything but that.
You sure?
Give me those figs.
I follow you. Thank you.
So let's go. Let's slice. Start carving. Go, 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 go. That's too rare. How did that happen? Liver should be served medium, but it's completely undercooked.
40 seconds.
I will be so upset if this liver takes me out of the running. Oh, that liver.
That liver. Do you
that,
just wake up in a cold sweat thinking about that liver?
You know, I think until the actual episode aired, and I got to see what the judges, said behind the scenes, like my husband and I would be sitting around watching TV and like, we just look at each other and say like, oh, that fucking liver. Like, we looked at each other and our eyes, like we both knew exactly what the other one was thinking, or I'd be like, I'd just get a text in the middle of the day, like, oh, the damn liver. Like, yeah. But, you live and learn and you move on,
I think Southerners across the country let out a collective groan. Or like, oh no, because as the finale was progressing, I was thinking, man, she's going to pull off the upset of the year in Top Chef history here, because Buddha was on a heck of a run leading up to the finale, and you were just coming off of Last Chance Kitchen. I thought she's going to pull off the upset. She's going to be like, coming out of Last Chance Kitchen and dethroning what a lot of people are calling the GOAT, of Top Chef. So what were you thinking there when you saw that happening and thought, oh, well, I think I'm done?
Well, so I have been a lifelong fan of Top Chef, and it's really interesting to say people to say, oh, Buddha studied it so much. And, Buddha and I had many conversations over the time of the show about strategy and how we both really understood it. And, I knew that when I was putting that liver on the plate, I was thinking, well, it's not going to send me home because there's no way to go home. But if I don't win all of the other courses, there's no way I'm winning. And what happened is I did win all of the other courses. I think that most of the chefs would agree. And I think the judges agreed. And I think that Tom Colicchio even, made sure that was known on Twitter. But that liver, man, it just it was so undercooked. He even told me at one point, he was like, listen, if you had overcooked it, or if you'd even just cooked it a little bit more, the conversation would have been that maybe the dish ate a little sweet. He's like, but it was just such a standout point that the liver was so undercooked.
Yeah, I was going to mention that Tom Colicchio mentioned on Twitter. So you gotta appreciate that validation, at least from Tom in the Twitter sphere, saying that you would have won had that liver been cooked to temp.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and it's also like I guess it also just gives it validates, that like your hard work was recognized and that your meal was excellent. And I've been a cook and a chef and a human being long enough to know that like one mistake is not the end of the world. And so, I
Right.
didn't win Top Chef again. I got, second place again. But I think that it's okay. It's okay. It's not, I have this like I have an amazing restaurant, an amazing family, I have all these other things. And so you just kind of move on from it. And if I had won Top Chef the first time, I wouldn't have had this opportunity to come back and do, or maybe I would have had the opportunity, but I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have been back here on World All Stars. And I think I got to show a lot more on this season than I did my first time around. So yeah, I'm satisfied.
Yeah. So when I did my recaps, I did episode recaps with Top Chef season 7 alum Kenny Gilbert. I don't know if you're familiar with his work or
Yeah.
anything, but we were talking about the Top Chef kind of family, and he said, even if you lose, you still win because of the doors that it opens for you post Top Chef. So I think you're right. We talk about the liver kind of jokingly, like, oh, that damn liver, but really you've been on the show twice now, and your career is just at the just gonna blow up in many ways.
Yeah. And, I've been lucky enough to be not just on the show twice, but the entirety of the show twice. So like
Right.
some people get on and maybe, they make it out like, fifth or sixth, and then they come back for another All Stars and they make it out, whatever. I've made it all the way through both times. I think Brian Valtaggio has done it. And I think maybe Sheldon has done it. I'm not sure that I think that's it. I don't think there's anybody else. So um maybe Gregory Gordet. I can't remember if he made it onto the last one or not, because I know he hurt his back when he was over there for the finale. But
Hmm.
yeah, so I'm kind of in a class of my own.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in that like almost always the finisher, but just not.
Well, I mean, Buddha and yourself are in that rarefied air that you're
Yeah.
both winners and both finalists in 2 different seasons of Top Chef. So yeah, no knocking on you for sure of being a finalist twice. So let's kind of go back. I want to talk a little bit about your background. So tell us a little bit about your background and how kind of those roads led to Top Chef.
I grew up in a family that my mother cooked dinner. We always had a family dinner every night. And Sunday dinners were like always a big, huge ordeal. So I grew up, in kind of the South Midwest area that exists in Western Kentucky. And food was always my thing. I when I had moved back to Paducah and opened Freight House in 2015, I got this weird phone call, and it was like from a friend of mine, Weta Michael, who's a very well known chef here in Kentucky. And she was like, "Listen, I turned your name over to the Top Chef people to see if maybe like you wanted to do Top Chef." And I thought, absolutely not. Like I've watched it on TV. I love it, but I am not willing. I don't want to leave my restaurant, my baby of a restaurant that had been open, just a couple years. I don't want to leave. I just got married. There's like all these things. I didn't want to do it. Um, but the more I talked with them and the more I thought about it, and then my mother told me that it was like my civic duty to do Top Chef.
Civic duty.
Civic duty. Here we're in this little tiny town, and she's like, "It is. You got to go on there. You got to represent Paducah. You got to represent all the, the women in Kentucky that have moved away and come back to, start a business of their own. Like you have." You are a good representative and you need to do it. And so I decided to do it, and it's been life changing, which I think any other Top Chef contestant could tell you. Top Chef changes your life. So
Yeah, absolutely. So how soon, or well, I don't want to say how soon. There's been a few years, but how did you react when you got the call for season 20? Like, did you know that was coming, or did it come completely by surprise?
They called me to do season 17, which was right after mine. It was an All Stars season, and they called me to do it. But I actually, when the season 16 finally finished airing on Top Chef, like on TV, I was 37 weeks pregnant or something. So I had a baby just a couple weeks after Top Chef finished airing on TV. And so there was I was like, no, I'm not going. I mean, these shows take about 10 months to shoot. It's like 10 months between like when it shoots and when it kind of finally airs. And I was like, nope, I can't go. My child will be 3 months old. I said, but call me the next time. And they did. They called me the next time. And my husband and I had talked about it a lot. And he would always say, you've got to go back. Like if you get the chance, you've got to go back. So when they called, they were like, do you want to do it? And I was like, yes. And they were like, do you need to like talk to anybody about this? I was like, nope, we've already talked about it. My husband's been putting it out in the ethos for years now, like talked about it. I'm going, I'm ready to do it. Sign me up. And they were like, okay, well, this is great. So yeah.
That's awesome. So now in the show, you were a new mom when you were filming season 20. And one thing that I thought was probably the most badass thing I've seen on reality TV is you talking about, pumping milk and shipping it back home. Like being a mom doesn't stop just because you're on a reality TV competition. So kind of tell me about that. You said your husband was full go on letting you go or not letting you go, but on that came out wrong.
You are a sad little man, Eugene.
On on agreeing to have you away for that long.
Nice recovery. Well executed.
So kind of talking about being a new mom and filming that.
Yeah, so my daughter Lula my oldest daughter is 4, and she was, born just right after season 16 finished airing. And then I had a new daughter, Hazel. When I left, she was 9 months old. And, I have been a big supporter of women, men, people not having to choose if they want to be in this industry or they want to be a parent, which is a lot of times something people are faced with, specifically women in this industry. And if you do want to stay in this industry and have a family, it's really going to be hard to breastfeed and pump and all of those things, because what are you going to do at 7 o'clock? Say, sorry, it's 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. I got to step off the line and take 30 minutes to pump. It just doesn't, it's not conducive to the lifestyle of being, a parent or a breastfeeding parent. And so I thought, I talked about it with my husband and I said, should I wean her? Should I be done? And he was like, well, do you want to? And I said, no, and I'm only going to be gone for 10 weeks. So I feel like I could pump the whole time. And I brought it to Top Chef and I said, this is something that I'm going to do. And they were like, okay, you just let us know what you need and we'll take care of it. And I never asked for any special considerations on the show. I never asked for special time to pump or anything like that. I just did it wherever I was, in front of whoever I was. I did it in interviews. I did it on car rides. I did wherever I needed to, in front of whoever needed to. And I just kind of took it as this moment to educate, because breastfeeding has become a lot more mainstream, but pumping has not. People are still sitting in the liquor room and in the, employee bathroom pumping. And so I said, I'm gonna take hold of this and I'm gonna show it to the world. And it's been wonderful. And the support that I've received from the pumping community has just been outrageous.
Yes, it was. I mean, I'm not a parent or a mom, especially obviously, but it was really inspirational just to watch that. For women, like you were saying in the industry, it's different than what men have to go through, right? Because you have that additional challenge of being a mom and trying to do all that at the same time, and you prove that you can do both, and that was really inspirational to watch. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Another thing that I appreciated so much about you, especially on season 20, probably more so appreciated on season 20 than on season 16, was the way you reflected and shown Southern cooking culture, especially on a global stage. There's a lot of things that were on the show that we'll talk about here in a little bit later that us as Southerners take for granted, and the international community is like, oh, what is that? That's brand new. That's really interesting. And we've been doing it since we were kids. I was raised in Georgia. I lived in Alabama and Tennessee for a good chunk of my life. So, but being Filipino, I had Filipino food and Southern food. So, seeing things like on episode 1, the pot liquor episode, where they were like, oh, it doesn't look pretty, or what is this? And it's pot liquor. Like, I knew what you were going for. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. And then they just didn't understand it. What were your thoughts going through that first episode about pot liquor? And you're like, maybe I shouldn't do so much Southern food, or or were you at that point like, I'm gonna stick to it?
You know, what was so funny is that when I set that down, I said, "Oh, pot liquor." Like one of the chefs from England was like, "This is liquor," and Tom was like, "No, this is like it's pot. It's like a thing. It's like an actual thing." You know, and for me, I thought that that dish. You know, here's a little behind the scenes for Top Chef. If you can't relate your food to the challenge, then it's sometimes worse than undercooking the protein. Like you can't just put up whatever you want. And the judges know when you just put something up and find like a sneak around to try to relate it to the challenge. And I myself, when they said do a vegetable focused dish, I thought, oh my God, not only is this like a vegetable focused dish, but I'm talking about using vegetables that aren't traditionally viewed as something you would eat. And I'm talking about using the byproduct of cooking vegetables as one of the main components. So I thought that my dish like hit all of the marks. And that's a dish that I've done in some way or form times before. And so I knew it was delicious. I think it was one of those that was like a little like, oh God, what is this woman serving us? Like weeds and like leftover pot liquor? Like what is happening right now? But it didn't sway me from trying to stick to my kind of like, weird Southern Jewish, Midwestern, Appalachian style of cooking. It probably, if anything, pushed me more to stay true to myself.
I mean, because it's so easy to look at the internationalness of season 20 and go, oh, I need to tone down my southernness because they're just not going to understand it, or they're just not going to get it, or they're not going to like it, because southern regional food is very regional, right? It's very regional to the south, and bringing that overseas, I was so proud. I was so proud at that moment. I
Thank
said,
you.
this is where Sarah's going to go. If this is where Sarah's going to go for the rest of the season, it's going to be fantastic. And sure enough, you did. You pushed Southern culture and Southern heritage through the entire season, and I was so happy to see it. And every time you pulled out a traditional Southern dish or Southern flavor to something, I was like, yes, there it is. I love it. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. So Restaurant Wars was a little different this year, and I want to talk to you
Yeah.
a little bit about that, because they didn't really have a front of house, or they didn't have a front of house or
Yeah.
executive chef role that's traditionally part of the drama of Restaurant Wars. You kind of took on that front of house role a little bit in informing the staff and what the menu was and how to serve and everything. But to me, I liked the new version of Restaurant Wars as a viewer. I always found that
Okay.
buying napkins, plates, and artificial plants for a fake restaurant was boring to me. That was not my, that was my time to go make a sandwich and then come back when the cooking actually started. What did you think of this new version of Restaurant Wars?
I think that this new version of Restaurant Wars fit the um, fit the space that we were in. So for season 16, we were in this huge warehouse where they built three. We had three teams on my season where they built these three portable kitchens with these three dining rooms. And we were in a warehouse, and we had to like fill that space, and we had to get it all done. And I did front of the house, and I loved it. I'm really involved in the front of the house at my restaurant. It's a totally open kitchen, and I'm there expediting on the line every night, and I step behind the bar, go to the host. I do whatever needs to be done. Um, and so I love that aspect of dining and restaurant owning. But I think for this one, this was a 3-star Michelin restaurant. Like this place, this was like, I just can't even explain how amazing the kitchen was. Velvet, like beige and pink and gold and wood, like all just like weeping from everywhere. And I think that it would have kind of made a mockery of the space that we were in to like let us go out there and just, hope and wing it with a bunch of staff that didn't know what they were doing. So I loved that they were respectful of Claire's space. I think that was a big part of it. Um, but I also think that the reason our team did so well is because we recognized that we couldn't skip on that, even though it wasn't part of the assignment. We're like, essentially, it wasn't a part of the assignment. It was something that couldn't be overlooked. So I made this huge pamphlet with like every chef their dish. I like broke it all down, what pieces of silverware we needed for the dish, what wines we prepared to be paired with the dish. And then I went even like one step farther and wrote like a bio on every chef, like how they placed in their season, where they were from, their age, their hometown, what style of food they cooked, what was the inspiration behind the dish they were serving. And all I had to do was go over it with one guy. And then he was able to take that out and present it to the staff that he was with. And so I think that, they were very well informed on what they were doing, and it probably gave them some ownership of what was happening. And I think that that's another reason we did so well. That, and you had 3 Americans who had already done Restaurant Wars on one team, and we knew what was expected of us.
Yeah, you guys killed it, and I think your whole menu. This was probably one of the clearest winner and not winners of Restaurant Wars that I've seen in a while. I think you got from the onset. I thought this team's got it. They got it together. And then when you mentioned in Judges Table about writing down that service Bible, essentially, I think that was a huge key to winning. Speaking of your meticulous note taking, in one episode you said you kept a manual spreadsheet of everything that was going on.
Yeah.
Do you still have that like framed somewhere?
Oh yeah. I still have it. I mean, I'm like sitting here at my desk right now and I like looked over, and this is my book from the first season of Top Chef. And it has like, this is so funny. It has like, in case of loss, please return to, and it has Sara Bradley as a reward, $125,000, because that's what they gave away on my season. But I still have that book. And this is another really interesting thing that happened on that episode that you wouldn't have seen on TV. So normally they call the chefs out, and I feel like it's usually decided who is the winner when they call up the winning team. Like the chefs they've already talked about, or the judges, they've already talked about it. They know who their winner is. I can't remember another episode, especially in this season, where they called everybody up and then they had to stop and deliberate and then say who the winner was. And I think it's because I'll say it flat out. I've said it to Buddha and Amar before. I think that they thought I was the winner. They saw the front of the house staff. They definitely loved the Cullen skink dish. Claire Smith said it was the highlight of the meal. And I think they were going to give it to me. And I'm not saying in anything bad or anyway, this was Buddha's idea. It was his baby. He had that idea, and I'm so glad that he had it because it was such an amazing concept. And I think that when they heard it was his concept, they had to stop and think about what actually, who was the winner. Like, yes, I did all the front of the house stuff. Yes, I probably had the best dish, but who was the daddy or the mommy of this idea. And that played out in the finale too. Like, yeah, I had the 3 out of the 4 best dishes, and yeah, I had this really great emotional connection. But Buddha's meal altogether, he collectively served up something better than I did, and that's what happened in Restaurant Wars. He collectively provided, our team the kind of the platform to stand on and win. So I think it was great that he won. I mean, I would have loved to take that win. We still all get $10,000. So,
Yeah. And I think Buddha said in one of his confessional interviews that concept is what wins Restaurant Wars, right? So would the Cullen skink dish have been made had it not been the concept of United Kitchen to begin with? There could be. Who knows?
It would not.
But
no,
probably
it
not.
would not have been. It would not. 100% would not have been Cullen skink. Would not have been. And you have about 10 minutes, which is not a lot of time for 4 chefs to like create a concept and decide who's going to cook what. And so, when he opened that book of his and he had those ideas, man, it was like, this is a great idea. Like, why are we even, there's no arguing. Like you have to do that as a chef and as a business owner. You have to recognize when somebody else has something really strong, and you have to support that. And so I think that that's why our team dominated.
Yeah. Dominated is the right word. So another episode or another moment in the episode that I thought was really neat with you was in Tolly Time, episode 10, with Ozma Khan, and she was talking about her origin of being a cook, and it really hit you emotionally about wanting to create specific food memories for your kids being a chef. And I related to that as you were saying that on TV. I kind of paused it and I was talking, and that it reminded me of me because I'm not a chef, but I am a foodie. And one thing that I love is when my grandkids come to visit me is trying to get them to try something new. And one of my favorite memories is taking them to dim sum for the first time when they were like 3 or 4. And I have a picture of them trying to use chopsticks and eating chicken feet. And so that related to me of creating food memories for kids. And so in general with you, like how important is it to you as a chef to kind of get parents out of the kids menu rut, right? I even looked at your menu at Freight House. You don't have a kids menu on there.
We have a very small kids menu, which was drawn by our general manager's daughter. It has things like broccoli playing the banjo, and it's like this very fun kids menu. But the options there are some kind of your standard kid options, like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a grilled cheese sandwich. But you can also get like a really nice New York strip. You can also get like really nice, you can get all these different things. And the options aren't just like we don't have chicken tenders, we don't have buttered spaghetti. We don't have any of that stuff. But my favorite thing that is on the children's menu is what we call a Lula plate, named after my daughter. We started doing it when my daughter was doing baby-led weaning. And it's available. A lot of times we'll go out to the table and say, "Do your kids eating food yet?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Are they allergic or have they anything they haven't tried?" And then we go in the back and we find every fruit. We do egg whites, we do cheeses, we put blue cheeses, we put pickles, we put olives, we put all of this weird stuff that is the right texture and size for the age of the child on a plate, and we bring it out with a little tiny fork on a real plate. Hold on a second. And then we give it over to the kids, and the kids love it. We'll take it out and these parents will say, "Oh, they don't really like beets." And I'm like, why don't you just let your kid eat it and see if they like beets? And I tell you what, beets are one of the biggest hits for kids because they're this really beautiful color. They're very sweet. They're soft. There's everything that they love about food is right there in a vegetable. So that is one of the things that, if a child comes in and they're like, "Oh, I don't see anything," I'm like, "What do you like? We will make you something. We will find something for you." We're a very kid-friendly restaurant. A lot of people wouldn't think that about some that's a little more, like a restaurant like mine, but we're super kid-friendly. We always give kids tours of the kitchen, take them in the back, show them where their food was cooked, how the servers bring it in. I think that you got to start young. So we try to really do that at the restaurant.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that is to get kids off of the chicken tender train as soon as you can, and get them exposed to different things, and they have a well-rounded palate by the time they're an adult. Because when I see picky adult eaters, I'm like, yeah, you weren't really adventurous eating growing up. So
Yeah.
when you said that on that episode, I identify with it. And I just thought that was a great moment too. So so I want to talk about Last Chance Kitchen a little bit. So this is the first time you've been through the Last Chance Kitchen gauntlet. And really for you, it was 2 challenges into the Last Chance Kitchen gauntlet before you came back. So tell me about that experience there. How does it feel being in Last Chance Kitchen versus the Top Chef competition proper? Like what's the adrenaline level in Last Chance Kitchen versus the regular?
So Amara and I got kicked off after the Wellington. We got sent home after the Wellington. We woke up in the morning and went to go. We went out with we went out with some of the chefs that had already been eliminated. Woke up in the morning, cooked against Charbel. I won. Took a little tiny break, and Charbel and I cooked again. I won. I went home. They picked me up at like 3 a.m. to go and do the next challenge. It was
3 a.m?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was like they picked me up because they were like, "All right, she won. She's back in the competition." So they picked me up. They took me back to the competition. It was intense. And I rolled right into that Trump Lloyd challenge. And I think I was a little fatigued. Actually, I know I was a lot fatigued, but I did it. And it was a big adrenaline, and I kind of walked away from the elimination with Amar. I was ready to go home. I was ready. I was done. I was over it. I wanted to see my family. I thought, this is it. I just send me home. And then once I set foot in that kitchen, I thought, oh my God, like, no. I talked to my husband and he was like, if you don't go in there and do it as hard as you can, like, this will have been a waste of time. So I went back in ready to just rock, and I did. I cooked like a gumbo pot pie. Like,
Which looked
what is a
delicious, by the way.
oh my God, so good, so good. And then here I am, like, burning cabbage with bacon and apple butter. Like, I just was like, I'm gonna stay true. I served them cod with tater tots. Like, I was like, you still got to have fun. You got to do the best you can do. And those two girls that I chose to help me do it were like the dream team. Those women, Sylvia and Nicole and I, were very close, and I was so happy to cook with them.
Awesome. Yeah, it was really neat kind of seeing Last Chance Kitchen was almost like a mini finale, the way that kind of worked out for you. So you get back into the main competition. You're like, I'm back, bitches. And then all of a sudden it's this really intense challenge of molds. So what was going through your mind? You're like, oh my gosh, what did I just walk back into? Again, not knowing this at 3 a.m.
Yeah. Well, they picked me up from like my hotel to take me back to like Top Chef set. So I did really good in the mold quickfire challenge. I was in the top on that one. And then when they explained the challenge, it felt so, I caught some slack on social media for this. Like, people saying like, oh, Sarah's saying this isn't my food. This isn't my food. It's literally not, like, there is nothing that I do in my restaurant or in my style of cooking that is trying to deceive someone into thinking they are eating something they are not. Like, my whole style, the ethos of what I do is to be super transparent about the ingredients and the products and the techniques. And so this one for me was like, it was out of left field. I literally was like in a panic with no idea what I was going to do. And, some people have said like, oh, she did matzo ball soup twice. Listen, there's a million ways to do matzo ball soup. One of them is to not shape the matzo ball into the tamal and serve it. My tamales, actually, they looked like one. Like, they were wrapped up in a banana leaf, like in the square shape. They looked perfect, and I got really nervous that the judges would not be impressed or wouldn't think it was like elevated enough if they had to sit there and like unwrap it and unfold it, and then they have these banana leaves. Like, what do they do with it? But what I should have done is left it all wrapped up and let it be steaming hot, and then had like a salsa on the side. And when they took that salsa, which would have been diced carrot and celery and onion, like all the little broth, it would have looked like a salsa set with some gelatin. And when they put it on top of the hot tamal, it would have melted out. That's what I should have done. But hindsight,
One thing I thought was funny is when they were asking you about the dish, and they said, so the molds that you used on here, you're like, why did you use these molds? Like, oh, I don't know. Everybody else is using molds, and I guess I got to use a mold.
Yeah.
That's probably the most honest answer, because there's so many times I see on judges' table where chefs on the fly are trying to come up with an answer that they think the judges want to hear, but you're just like, I don't know. I just thought I had to use a mold. Everybody's using a mold, right? So
we literally walked into the kitchen and there were like hundreds of molds everywhere. They were everywhere. I just thought like that it was expected of me to use a mold. But no, I didn't need a mold at all. I just, for some reason, I think Ali fell into that part too. Like, he's going to make these little falafel turtles, like they were like, we just thought we had to do it, but we didn't.
So I wanted to ask this too. So Buddha brings $1,000 worth of molds and is rewarded with 2 mold-centric challenges. What are the chances? Like, how in advance do you know about these challenges? Settle a conspiracy theory for me, if you will.
When it is announced. That when you get to the 8, you're going to have restaurant wars, and that but you don't know, but most likely you know that two people are coming back from last chance kitchen. Like there's some things that happen that you know are going to happen. There's always going to be like one overnight cook. There's always going to be, you know, this kind of like rustic family style. Like there's some things like that. But the actual challenge, you know, when they tell it to you. And then you have this little short break, like in a quick fire, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, where they tell you all the rules, they make sure everyone understands, and you go right back into it. The elimination, the rules are usually a little more intricate, but at that point, it's not like a quick fire, you know, like you can be kind of conceptualizing the dish. But yeah, I mean, it's like when it happens, it happens. So.
Yeah. I just thought it was really interesting that he brings all the molds, and then he's like, "Oh, we were going to use molds on the next 2 challenges." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Listen, Buddha is amazing, and he has really kind of, I mean, I don't want to say cracked the mold of like what is supposed to, you know, what happens.
He hacked the show. He hacked the show.
Yeah. But he, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you know, he is a scholar of Top Chef. But you know, I love the like spontaneity of cooking. Like I would say I am definitely someone that cooks from the hip, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, like swinging my hips, dancing around, drinking wine. It's just a different style of chef, not to say one is better than the other. But yeah, I mean, you don't come with molds unless you have dishes prepared to put in those molds. So I can only imagine that if he had $1,000 worth of molds, he had even more dishes in his back pocket ready to go in those molds, because I don't think he used them all, you know.
Yeah. So that brings us to kind of the finale round. How soon are you thinking about the finale menu as you're getting closer to that time? Are you thinking maybe a few episodes? You're like, oh man, I'm getting close. There's a possibility I could make it. I need to start thinking about it.
I mean, I went into the show with some ideas. We knew that we would be like, one of the things was like, listen, I got to tell my family where I'm going to be. They were like, okay, you're going to be in the United Kingdom. I was like, and then where's the finale? They were like, it's going to be in France. I was like, all right, cool. So I kind of thought, you know, like, what are some dishes that are still true to my style, but can relate to like the, you know, France. And so, you know, just start thinking about like the couvillon, you know, like it's not hard for a Southern chef to, find, you know, influence of French cuisine in their food. So, you know, like I kind of had that Couvillon thing. You know, I had this history of burgoo. It was created by a French chef in Kentucky. Like, that's great. I mean, that is like, how more regional Southern can you get? You know, that pea cake, I had come prepared with that recipe memorized, and I thought it would play out in London somewhere, English peas, you know, it didn't, but you know, it worked perfectly, and they loved it. You know, and
Yeah.
the
What a
liver
time to
and
pull
onion,
that out.
yeah, and the liver and onion dish was not supposed to be the liver and onion dish. I mean, I had a different. It was not supposed to be calf's liver, and it wasn't even supposed to be sweetbreads. You know, they didn't air, but it was supposed to be foie gras, which goes great with like sweet onions and, you know, and sweet things, and it was supposed to be foie gras. But you have to get foie gras, like raw foie gras, at a special store in London, I guess, or that protein was like not available at any of the stores that we went to because it wasn't a place where they sold it. So unbeknownst to me, being in the land of France, thinking I could get foie gras anywhere, came in with a dish in my head that I was never going to be able to execute. And so, yeah, that one sucked.
Yeah,
Back to the liver. It's all back to the liver.
All back to the liver. I mean, that's interesting. Gabri was able to find the one Mexican store in Paris, and you couldn't find foie gras.
I know. Yeah. You know, like, yeah, it was bizarre. I mean, even Buddha forever, he like struggled just to find, you know, his original dish was not lobster. I don't think it was lobster. I think it was scallops, like fresh scallops. He couldn't find them. Yeah, but I mean, you would think foie gras. So what I should have done, I've worked this out in my head a million times. I should have taken onions, like whole onions, split them in half, salt baked them, like covered the whole cut side and like just all kinds of pois, terrine or torchon or whatever I could find, and then like salt baked them so they would have like that fat would have cooked down in there, and then it would have been liver and onions. and I would have, carved them beautifully and served them like that. But, that's what I've walked away from. Or I should have just done a completely different dish. There was absolutely no reason I had to be committed to liver and onions. I just felt like it, told my story of, like told part of my story. Yeah. And I'll have to think about it for the rest of my life.
And brought up in every interview you'll ever do from
I
now until
know.
eternity. So I think one of my favorite dishes from your finale menu was that burgoo, especially that rabbit roulade just looked fantastic. But I think my favorite part of it, because I couldn't taste it, obviously, was just watching everybody eat it. Was when you told them, "Hey, that cornbread, you're gonna break that up and put it in the beans," and everybody at the table was like, "Oh my God, this was perfect." And meanwhile, again, all of us in the South were like, "Welcome to the party. Beer's in the cooler." I mean,
Yeah.
this is not new to us, but it's always so interesting to watch in this international episode how people took to southern cooking and southern ways of preparing food, and that was just a microcosm of that, and I thought was really great.
Yeah, when I was plating up those beans, so those were cocoa beans, and I'd never had them. And the guest judge, Helene DeRose, like when I told her, I was like, and these are these like white French beans. She was like, Sarah, these are cocoa beans. These are the best beans in the world. And I was like, I mean, they literally were the best beans in the world I have ever had. They were so good. They were fresh. They had a very short season. I got super lucky. Um, yes, like, I mean, here I am. And then I don't remember who it was. One of the other chefs was like, those beans are pretty soupy. And I was like, uh-huh. Like I remember cooking the beans and wanting to make sure there was enough liquid so that when I put them all into the little cocottes, and then I could top them with a little extra, like, I guess we could call it like bean juice, because I knew that. I mean, I've been eating white beans and cornbread my whole life. And so I knew that it needed that. And if they were too dry and you put that cornbread in there, it would just be, it would set up too much. So um, yeah, that dish was so beautiful. I loved that dish. Yeah,
It looks so
I was
homey.
really, yeah. And like a lot of the judges said, like, here they are, like Helene DeRose. She says, I'm sitting here having a 4-course meal from 3 chefs. I've got 12 courses to eat, and I for some reason could not stop eating this big container of beans. Like, she ate like all of the beans just because, because it was delicious. And so, that dish was wonderful and I loved it. And yeah, I'm gonna cook that one again. We'll see
Yeah,
what
that
goes on the menu.
that one. Oh, I hope it does. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Elaine Ducasse coming onto the boat. Were you surprised? Because they made it a point. They really tried to drive home the point that he's not coming. And then I think they said it twice in the episode. And then here he comes. He shows up. So how cool is that for you?
So cool. I mean, I think they, and they were like really sad too. They were like, "Oh, you're gonna cook on Elaine DeCosta's boat." And we're all like, they're like, "But he is not gonna be able to join us. We're so sorry." He sends his apologies. And in the time of like COVID, you just get that. Like people get sick and they can't do things. So we're thinking like, oh, there he was, they were like, he was supposed to be there, but he's not gonna be there. Padma was so sad, oh, so and yeah, and when he popped on the boat, like he came down the steps and I looked around the corner and I saw him and I was like looking at all the other chefs thinking like, is anybody else seeing this? Does anybody else see what's happening? Like, you guys, am I the only one? Am I recognizing the wrong person? Like, this is him, right? And then finally they all saw him also, and it was so cool. I mean, talk about meeting someone you've looked up to for years that has shaped food. I mean, that was it.
Yeah, one thing I thought was really funny you said is when Elaine Ducasse tells you to peel your mushrooms, you peel your mushrooms.
Yep. Yep.
Because you were asking, it was like, should I do this? He said, yeah, you should. Okay.
Yeah. Well, not only did I peel my mushrooms, but he also asked me if I chopped my duxelle by hand or with a machine. And I was like, with a machine. I like with the Roboku. Like I have a limited amount of time. And he was like, oh. So I went back, I peeled mushrooms and I chopped them by hand and made duxelle again.
Wow.
Because what if, and I part of it was because he told me to, but the other part of it was like, okay, well, they're gonna have him saying this, and if I get sent home because this duxelle is not good, they're gonna have like every like soundbite they need to be like, Sarah, he gave you all the tools to make the proper duxelle and you didn't do it. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Padma's departure from the show a little bit, from Top Chef as host and executive producer. So you saw that on Instagram probably the same time everybody else did. So what were your thoughts? Did you have any inclination during filming that this was going to be her last season, or did it catch you by surprise like everybody else did?
No clue. No clue. I mean, she was um, very emotional and at the end of it, and Tom did have lead like a very large toast with all of the staff, I'm gonna say staff, like with all of the chefs, with all of the crew. He led a pretty big toast, and I've never heard of him doing that before. He didn't do it on my first season. Thanking everyone for all of the time and energy. And when I look back on it now, maybe there were clues, but no, not at the time, no clue. And I found out at the same time as everybody else. I was actually doing like a Instagram live, and it came out, and like my phone is like blowing up, and then people start asking me about it on Instagram live, and I'm like, hey, you guys, like, I don't know, I'm hearing it at the same time as everybody else, but I'm super excited for her. I think that that's a long time. She's been on 19 seasons, and we can't. I think we all have this connection to Padma because she is scary and compassionate at the same time. She's scary. You don't want to disappoint her. You are fearful of upsetting her, or not fear. You want to do good for her. Like, she has this like compassion that you want to see her be proud of you, and you don't want to do bad, and you're scared of her comments, but you like seek her praise so much. So that's what they need in a new judge. They need someone that is able to elicit all of those emotions. And I think they're gonna have. I don't think it will be. It's gonna be hard to find somebody as good as Padma, but I know that they will. And I
Who's
know
on?
that they've already signed up for 21. They've
Yeah,
already
yeah.
said they're doing it. So I have no clue. If somebody knows, they're not talking.
Who would be on your short list as a host? Putting you on the spot. So if you don't want to answer, I understand. But who would be on your short list?
I think there's quite a few Top Chef alums. I think Kristen Kish would be amazing. She has. I've met her many times. Just she has such an amazing personality. She is not hard to look at all. Like she kind of, and she understands food. Like, she gets food, and she gets Top Chef. She's done it and won it. So I think she would be great. Um, I don't know. I think it would kind of be fun to have someone that doesn't really know exactly what is going on. It's got to be somebody who's hosted and who gets the kind of the ins and outs of it. But I don't think it needs to be like some super, super, super chefy person. I think it just needs to be somebody that's a foodie. I think it might be really interesting. I'm scared for the new contestants because we all know Padma loves spicy food, right? We all know Padma, like, be careful when you cook Indian food. We know all these little intricacies about her palate, and the next person is an unknown. So it's like having a new judge every single day.
Yeah, 21 is going to be really interesting for those exact reasons. Because you're right, Padma's a known entity, and people know what she likes, what she doesn't like. But yeah, you're coming in with a new person, and assuming they're going to be a judge and a host, yeah, you have no idea their palate or what they're going to like or not like.
Man.
It's going to be a roller coaster. So if Top Chef were to call you back for season 30 Galactic Multiversal All-Star Masters, would you go for a third run?
Okay, so if they called me and asked me to do this season, I'd be like, no way. If they called me in a couple years and asked me to do one, probably not. But if I was going to get to do like season 30, like like we're going to Mars to cook space food, I say I'd never do it again. I probably would do it again. I love competition. I love competition, and I love how compassionate the competition is on Top Chef. We really want to see each other do well. We really hate to see anyone be eliminated. Um, we're all chefs and we're all trying to achieve the same goal. And I think that over the years, we've seen it where it's much easier and much more inviting if you just lift each other up instead of putting each other down. So I could imagine that in 10 years, what the show would be. I probably would do it. Yeah, I probably would.
Awesome. Love to see you back on. So I want to close out with a couple of final quick fire questions. I'm just going to ask a question. You answer with whatever pops in your brain first. So
All right.
you ready? You ready?
Okay. I'm
Okay.
ready.
Guest judge you'd want to have drinks with.
Oh, guest judges I want to have drinks with. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Probably John Calipari, but that's from season 16. But yeah, I want to have drinks with him and try to understand his basketball game.
Okay, good. Favorite chef tested dish that wasn't yours from season 20?
Oh, from season 20. I'm gonna go with probably Charbel's onion.
That did look good.
I love onions are my favorite vegetable. Favorite, hands down. Charbel's
Look good.
onion.
Okay. Least favorite quickfire challenge ever that you participated in?
I will go with I'll do the steam challenge from this season where we only had like 1 gallon of water. Man, that guest judge, he just tore me apart. Just tore me apart. And it's because I veered away from Southern cooking and I tried to do something Asian because I had an Asian steamer basket. Time got me on that one. That one sucked. That one was silly.
Yeah.
Silly.
Most regrettable ingredient that Gabby burned?
Most regrettable. I feel for him. I think he probably burned his beans like 3 times. And it just feels like one of those things he should be able to cook. He always tried to cook beans in the pressure cooker. And that is why I don't really work with dried beans. We only use beans when they're in season. And I don't think I've ever cooked a bean in the pressure cooker. Yeah. Sorry, man. All those beans. Gosh. Yeah.
I felt for him. At one point, I wanted to shake him by the shoulders and go, man, get it together.
Yeah, I will say the best bean moment of the whole season, though, was when Gabby burned his beans on the finale and had to use canned beans. And then Padma was like, oh, these beans are so delicious. And I was like, those are canned beans. Those are canned beans. But that was probably the best bean moment.
All right, last one. Favorite filming location from season 20?
Oh, favorite filming location from season 20. I'll give you 2. For the fun one, it was Tottenham Spurs Stadium. I love football. I love soccer. I love all those things. I'm a huge sports person. I loved the setup of that elimination challenge. I thought it was super cool, and I'd never seen it happen on Top Chef before. But just for the sheer, the sheerness of all of it, it was definitely cooking on Elaine DeCosta's boat, under the Eiffel Tower, popping champagne bottles and spraying each other with them, making it to the finale. That was just so cool. That's a life memory. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a core memory. Yep.
Yep, that'll live with you for a while.
Yeah.
Awesome. So before we close out, I want to give you an opportunity to plug whatever projects you got going on, where people can find you. I just want to roll out the red carpet for you. So what's going on that people should know about?
I just started working on a cookbook. Just started working, but we're getting it together, and it's going to be really fun. And it's going to have a lot of the quirkiness that I possess will be in there, and a lot of those dishes that people have seen and want to know how to cook, those will exist in that book. You definitely need to come to Freight House and check me out. I'm in Paducah, Kentucky, which is in the middle of nowhere, but still close to every single thing you could imagine. And I have this really great kind of bourbon selection. We cook seasonal food, hyper local. Come to Freight House and check us out. And then don't forget to follow me on TikTok and Instagram, because right now, I'm just about 1,000 followers behind Buddha, and I'm constantly and like, listen, if I can't beat him on Top Chef, maybe I can get more followers on him than him on Instagram. That's like the only thing I'm holding on to right now. So go over there and follow me.
Is it at Chef Sara Bradley, right? Is that the handle?
At Chef Sara Bradley. Yep, at Chef Sara Bradley, both on TikTok and Instagram. And I have like I think I make really amazing content. Lots of like very quick tips, lots of cooking videos. Um, very, very few baby pictures sprinkled in there, but really good content that you want to eat your content.
Thanks for the plug.
No
I have
problem,
stalked your
man.
I have stalked your Instagram. It is very entertaining and very helpful. I especially like where you were like recapping your dishes from Top Chef. It's like, okay, here's what I could have done or should have done, or here's how you make it. And you shared your pea cake recipe on Instagram, which was great. So awesome. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate everything. For Chef Bradley, I am host Rich Herrera for Eat Your Content. Be sure to like and follow on Instagram at Eat Your Content and at Rich Herrera, and follow us on your podcast player of choice to be notified of new and upcoming episodes. So again, Chef Bradley, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. All right. Excited for your bear recaps. I can't watch that show. It's too traumatic for me. I lived that life and I can't do it.
I was going to say, a lot of chefs that I know locally here in Jacksonville, Florida, I asked if they watched it. They said, I've watched one episode and I couldn't do it. It just brought up too many traumatic things going for me. But I'm looking forward to recapping it. And if you ever want to, break down an episode with me, let me know, and I'll be happy to have you back on the pod. That'd be great.
All right. Cool. I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for
All right.
having me.